Welcome to our great logistics community. It is Unboxing Logistics. I'm Lori Boyer, and I am your host today. And I am so excited to say that it's almost that time. My favorite time of year, the holiday season. So I know the holiday season can fill us with excitement and fun, also a little bit of fear at times. And that is why I have invited the great and amazing Tom Butt here to be with us. He is going to walk us through everything we need to know to be ready. This is big expectations here, Tom.
Big expectations.
Everything we need to know to be ready for the holiday season, to make sure that we have our ducks in a row and that it's way more exciting and way less scary. So, Tom, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to all of our awesome logistics community.
Sure. So I'm Tom Butt. I am here representing, as part of Easy Post Summit Advisory Team and our Elevated Data Insights product. So I'm the Chief Customer Success Officer across both of those. And what that means is I help our customers get the most out of our product, make sure that they're getting the most out of our teams and the services that we offer. And then across the data product and professional services, how are we making sure that they're integrating and making sure that you get some synergy across both of those things?
That's awesome. I love it. So welcome. I know that Tom's been working on something really cool at Summit. Well, I'll give you a little sneak preview. That has to do with holiday readiness, and they've created an awesome, amazing program. Maybe Tom, tell me a little bit more about it so I don't get it all wrong.
Sure. So just a little bit more background on myself. So I have been in the logistics space for going on over a dozen years now.
Did you grow up, were you 8 years old and you're like, Mommy, I want to be in logistics?
I did really like playing with boxes as a kid. So
he knew it from the beginning.
I knew it, boxes, trucks, all of that stuff was really cool. So I get to do that as a career now, which is really fun.
I love it.
And so, I've been doing this for about a dozen years now out of school, mix of consulting and then working with major retailers to make sure that they are executing all of the operational things. So as omni-channel fulfillment, which is sort of this intersection of buying things in stores, but also ordering online. And now we have buy online, pickup in store, kind of orchestrating all of those efforts and making sure that the customer is getting a seamless experience. So when they click buy or they go into a store, that they're getting what they wanted and that they're not experiencing, again, that friction of the buying experience, so that they're more likely going to come back and recommend to their friends and family that same buying experience from whoever we're helping from a retail side.
That's incredible. I love how you use the word orchestrate, because I really do feel like the entire supply chain, logistics, shipping, all of that industry has a billion, trillion, gazillion moving pieces at any given time. And so it really is like being the conductor of an orchestra. I had to say, the first time I went, so I did not grow up as an 8-year-old thinking that I was going to be in logistics. I'm in marketing. And when I first joined the industry, I did a ton of research, reading up on it and learning about it. And boy, that first time, though, that I stepped into a warehouse, I was blown away at the complexity. At just the sheer volume of people and the sheer volume of packages that was just getting moved constantly. And so it really, shout out to you, shout out to all of our audience. It's incredible.
Sure. And it's pretty interesting. Just you talk about the complexity. We're talking, these are warehouses that are 1 million plus square feet, tens of millions of units of inventory, hundreds of thousands of SKUs, hundreds of people, automation. There's a lot going on in these distribution centers. It's not just, your order comes in and one person goes and grabs the 3 things off the shelf. It can be like that, but a lot of times it's a lot more complex than that. So figuring out how to orchestrate all that, again, to kind of anchor on that word, is what we help and specialize in.
That's amazing. And so for the purposes of today's show, holiday specific is where we're going to dive in. But before we do, I always like to get to know my guests a little bit.
Perfect.
So we got you in the hot seat.
Perfect.
I'm just going to ask you this or that questions. Just your quick answer. And we'll see if you pass my test of being my best friend or not.
Okay. No pressure.
Pressure's on. All right. Spring or fall?
Ooh, fall.
Fall, me too. Good one. Introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
Introvert. I think I'm right in the middle.
Sure.
Ambivert is what I like to say.
Okay.
For cooking at home or dining out?
Ooh, cooking at home. And just the caveat there is my wife and I love to cook and have gotten really into it. And we make steaks and vegetables and all sorts of things. And when we go to restaurants, we try to identify those things that are like, can we figure out how to make this at home? So
stop it. He is such a logistics guy.
So
Can
we
you
get
see
to
that?
we get to do that and just get to spend time with each other. And that's,
Do you have a favorite thing you like to cook?
So recently I'm a big fly fisherman, so I've been catching some trout and we've been doing some surf and turf with steak and trout and it's been really good. And
I always wish those were my dreams.
Yeah. And
cooking.
Yeah, and throw a good bottle of wine in there and you get that
just
almost
perfect night.
restaurant quality experience, but you put it at home in comfort of your home.
I'm going to give Tom's contact info out at the end so we can all hit him up for menus and recipes as well.
Please do.
Okay, comedy or drama?
Ooh, comedy.
Comedy, me too. Skydiving or scuba diving?
Ooh, this is a tough one. So I've done both.
You've done both. Okay, good.
Skydiving is a thrill, but scuba diving, there's just this whole underwater world that you can enjoy and not be quite as terrified.
Which was scarier? Oh, so skydiving was scarier.
Scarier was skydiving. Scuba diving, I've done the shark diving thing. I've done
You did the shark
diving thing, exactly.
Okay, I think we know that you're the adventure seeker here.
Scuba, yeah.
Okay. Watching sports or playing sports?
Ooh, I'm going to say playing sports.
Playing, okay. Book version or a movie adaptation? Are you a book guy?
I am a big book person. I think that there's a lot in the movies. I think if you're going to adapt something, it's better to adapt it as a series.
I agree.
Because there's so much complexity and nuance in the
I have to give you a high five for that one. That
Perfect.
is just, I so agree. My husband's always like, oh, I saw the movie of that. Like, and he didn't read the book. And my heart breaks a little bit. So, okay, we're going to do a couple holiday questions.
Perfect.
Eggnog or hot chocolate?
Hot chocolate.
Wrapping paper or gift bag?
I like the concept of a gift bag, or of a wrapping paper rather, but the execution for me is more the bag.
So is it the work of wrapping it, or is it that it doesn't look good?
It doesn't look good. I think I could do a lot of practice and it would look mediocre. And
it's good to hear you're not great at something because you're awesome at everything. Big party or small family gathering?
Small family gathering. That kind of ties in with the introvert thing.
Yeah, I agree. And fancy decorations, or you got like the homemade vibe going on?
Ooh, we go with a little more of a subtle, kind of try to be tasteful, homemade type of vibe.
Oh,
so
tasteful homemade.
Yeah.
Oh, God, you are above me.
But yeah, give my wife credit there. That's not as much of me though.
I like to blame my kids for the homemade vibe, but it probably originated with me.
That's where the heart is, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what I tell myself. Okay, now in terms of logistics, online shopping or in-person shopping?
Ooh, I'm going to go with the online shopping. Might be some people that are transitioning more and more to that. And I think from the online perspective, there's a shift over from desktop to mobile. I think that's made it a lot more convenient. You can do comparison. For clothes, I typically will like to go in just because I can try on the fit and some of that stuff.
Too.
But if it's something that's a hard good, that's something that I would just do the research, get best price, and do the research there.
I love how you said do the research because I think that's huge.
Right.
That's what everybody's doing.
Sure.
Okay, peak season comes along. Would you analyze historical data to get better forecasting, or would you try to adapt to real-time demand fluctuations?
Ooh, I think
forecast or real time?
I think the forecast, so this gets into our planning side of things.
Okay.
Looking at forecast, especially during holidays, patterns amongst individual buyers are a little bit less predictable. But when you look at aggregate demand, you see that there are patterns that are very common year over year. So for example, if you look at hourly demand patterns on Cyber Monday, the peak is always at that 10 o'clock time period, and it's very consistent actually.
Interesting.
So there's nuances and variance within the specifics, but the bigger macro patterns, we see that you can get some pretty good detail within that.
Oh, awesome. Would you increase your transportation capacity? Get more trucks, something like that, or optimize your existing resources?
This is a good question. This one's very dependent. This is going to depend on basically how are you utilizing and what is the maturity of your existing resource pool. So how far are you along that maturity curve? And if you're in a place where you've optimized things and you really have kind of squeezed all of the juice out of that lemon that you can, and you're not going to get much more, you might want to consider adding capacity. Through that, you're going to want to make sure you're doing your analysis and your diligence, make sure that's accurate. You can always add more, but if you're not being efficient with what you have, that gets to be a problem.
Oh, I love that. That's super smart. So all of you out there, if you have not tried optimizing, start with that. And then finally, would you prioritize speed or accuracy during the holiday season?
This is another You're giving me a lot of tricky ones here. So I'm going to say prioritize accuracy, but speed is very important.
Yeah.
So fill rate, making sure that you're getting your customers what they ordered, is a big thing. If you give that customer a negative experience where they have to go return and they have to go through all of this rigmarole to get things back, especially if it's something that they didn't even order,
right,
you're going to lose that customer and you're going to lose future sales. That lifetime value of that customer is going to drop off.
Yeah.
So focus on getting the execution there, but you should be looking at the you should be looking at on time, in full. So whatever your customer, whatever you've communicated to your customer, they may be forgiving in terms of how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
But if you delay longer than you said you were going to, that's when you start to run into issues and people start calling, asking, where is my order? For those of you familiar with Wizmo, that's a big thing that's out there. So make sure that you execute, but also fill to what you commit to.
Do it both.
Do it both.
Do it both. And I would say as well, like maybe as you say it's right before Christmas, maybe speed is going to be really crucial if you're not going to get it there by Christmas, right?
Absolutely.
I've had that as a mom before.
Yep. You want to be very cognizant of your shipping cutoffs. What services are you extending to your customer? How are you communicating those cutoff times on the website? Making sure that somebody orders something on my birthday, December 23rd.
Yes.
If they order something on December 23rd, is the communication set where the expectation is they will get that by Christmas? Or have you communicated to them it's already too late? Should they be looking at express options? Should you be giving them coupons to go into the store so they can do a last minute buy online pickup order?
Smart. So, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, and I think that especially in the last few years, as the customer expectations have just continued to rise about how quick it can get here. And because I do sometimes order something and it comes that afternoon, right? Same day, shipping and delivery. But obviously during such a peak season, that communication is going to be critical. So, okay. Thank you for that. We got to know you a little bit better.
Sounds good.
And we are going to dive into, I'm really excited, our holiday readiness.
Perfect.
Hopefully everybody, our community, that you're going to come away knowing a little bit more in terms of, are you ready? What kind of metrics are you looking at?
Absolutely.
And those kind of tips. So in terms of logistics, can you explain in general what holiday readiness means, especially in terms of e-commerce, but for everyone really?
Sure. So a big thing with holiday, a lot of times that coincides with the November, December, Christmas buying patterns, but it's really any time that you have a spike in demand over what your baseline is. So for example, we work with clients that are in the pool industry, and they may be somebody who their holiday season, their peak is in spring because everyone's getting ready for pool season. So depending on the industry that you're in, you may have different holiday spikes across the year. But really what it's doing is it's stress testing your fulfillment and your supply chain systems. So and that's across your people, your processes, your technology, your inventory, your sales teams. Kind of everyone is getting pushed to their limit. So think of it as rest of the year is kind of that jog and you're kind of moving along, but this is really where you need to sprint. And so getting through that sprint, you want to be ready for that. You want to be able to, you want to make sure that you don't have any breakage points and that, your timelines and when you're getting things to customers, it becomes a lot more critical. I think of it this way. Sometimes, there's a volume of 10x typically, or up to 10x, what you might see from a standard week. And
during the peak season.
During peak season can be up to 10x what you might expect during a regular week. So you're really cramming 10 weeks into one. So any mistake that you make, if you're down for a couple hours, that's, down for being a couple days potentially in normal times. So it's really about, making sure that you have a game plan and that you plan your work, you work your plan. So what you want to
plan your work your plan.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it, Tom.
We have a partner that we work with that he may recognize that, but really what you're doing is you're taking a look at your volumes, you're looking at your capacities, you're looking at how those all match up, and then you're going across, like I said, your people that you're going to be working with, you're going across your processes, and you're going across your technology. So that could be from a people side. That could be making sure that if you have incremental labor that you're bringing in to address the holiday volume, it could be making sure that those folks are trained up, that you have contingency plans. Are you working with staffing agencies? What sort of things do you need to do to make sure that those folks, when they come in as guests, are ready to execute? Likewise, on the process side, you may have things like proactive inventory placement or slotting initiatives that you're doing that maybe aren't quite as critical non-holiday times. And then from your technology standpoint, you want to make sure that your systems are ready and that they're not going to break. So it could be something from how many transactions are you processing per second from your order management system? Are your carriers ready to handle that volume? Have you communicated? So a lot of it is just making sure that you've dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's, across multitude of dimensions to make sure that everything just flows. I mentioned that I'm big into cooking earlier. For those of you that are familiar with mise en place, which is basically having everything set up ahead of time, so you have all your vegetables chopped to the right sizes, and you have all of your sauces made, and you've made sure that you're not going to run out of flour. You basically want to do that same thing, but you want to do that within your warehouses and across your fulfillment networks and your stores.
Ready. Now, I recently read a study, and it was by FedEx, I think, so shout out to my FedEx peeps, but that last year, peak season started a little bit earlier than what they had anticipated. It's starting to become bigger, and that maybe this year, especially with kind of all that economic uncertainty, and that peak season could start longer. What is that a trend you're seeing? And are there other trends or evolutions we're seeing kind of in this whole holiday readiness?
So it is spreading out. So it's not so much driven, Black Friday sales and things like that. Those are still really critical and really important. So Cyber Monday and Black Friday are still typically going to be, depending on your industry, your two biggest sales days of the year. Because of the shock that those volume spikes due to fulfillment systems, people are trying to come up with creative ways to spread that demand out so that you're not completely trying to cram everything into those few weeks. So this is kind
of driven by our consumer.
There's a feedback mechanism there. Okay, so I read into, and I'm not quite sure exactly what Jeff Bezos is thinking, but we've got Prime Day and things like that people are trying to take some of that volume and again spread it out.
So like Prime Day's just in July or something this year it was.
Correct. So there are retailers that are trying to get creative with that, those sorts of things to drive demand and maybe chop the top off of that peak a little bit and spread it out because instead of trying to cram all that volume into a week or two, if you can spread it out across 4 or 5 weeks, that's going to be better.
Do you recommend that is something so if we have an e-commerce business, do you recommend that method of trying to get some good sales out early?
If you can get creative, I know things like Veterans Day sales and things like that are maybe a little bit ahead of the holiday. Try to push those if you can. Your consumer is ultimately going to be the one who dictates that. Right. So your consumer may be somebody who maybe they want to shop during Christmas. Maybe they just want to get their Christmas shopping in. Maybe it's a family tradition or something like that.
It could be part of the experience sometime, right?
Yeah, but you may have people that you can incentivize to get things a little ahead of time and make it a little easier on yourself.
I'm the kind of person who that's always my goal. I'm going to start shopping early. I have 7 kids. So, I got trucks coming to my house like 4 times a day during peak season. But I never get around to it. So I maybe at some point, but I can see that happening.
And there are those folks too that wait until the day before and they're like, "Shoot, Christmas is coming up." And
that'd be my husband.
Yeah. So he might be more of a buy online, pick up in store kind of a guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so what do you see as the biggest challenges that our logistics industry faces during holiday season, peak season?
So I would say big one right now is carrier capacity. So, as we speak, we're looking at strikes from UPS and that's something that's out there.
Everyone's scared.
And, throughout the pandemic, basically e-commerce capacity got a lot more constrained. So one of the things you're going to want to make sure you do is you're communicating with your carriers, your FedExes, your UPS, your USPS, your DHLs, to make sure that they're aware of any volume spikes that you have, because they will, if you don't give them a reasonably accurate forecast, they may leave trucks sitting. You do the work to get things out the door ready to be shipped, and they say, "Hey, you didn't communicate with us. We weren't ready to pick up this extra volume." So making sure that capacity is there is a really key ingredient to this whole mix.
I always like to say over communicate, err on the side of over communication than under communication. I've worked in a few industries, and this one is extraordinarily relationship driven and communication driven. And so, I think that's super smart. Keep those lines open.
Sure.
I'm hearing a lot, especially as we're talking e-commerce with holiday, a lot of times people do tend to rely on their one favorite carrier. Do you have tips for testing the waters to expanding a little bit or anything?
Diversify where you can. If you haven't talked with a rep, maybe you're exclusively UPS. If you haven't talked with a FedEx rep, just reach out. I think getting those relationships established and doing those sorts of things, looking at rate shopping engines and ways that you can diversify your carrier set, so you're not as reliant on one carrier. There's weather or there's other things like that you might need to consider during those holiday seasons. That you've had those conversations, at least get that ball rolling. Ideally, you do that earlier in the year.
But it's not too late.
But it's not too late. So definitely start talking about what would it look like, and there are contract negotiations and things like that. So I would say there's getting to be a lot more of a gig economy too, in terms of you have same day delivery services, same day shippers, Uber delivery, things like that might be options for you if you have kind of exhausted anything with some of the major carriers. So there's things that you can do there.
Really cool alternative carrier options, regional carriers. I spoke with one of our Easy Post customers recently. Easy Post, we have a great shipping API, but this customer in particular had talked about during COVID, when we did have all those carrier limitations, and being able to shift over to regional carriers and then go back, whatever your routes are, that there are other options, and just having additional options, I think is really critical.
Absolutely. And, it's not just kind of a binary, like you either use a carrier or don't. There are some just capacity plays that you can do. So let's say your volume spikes a little more than you anticipated. If you have a plan, you can see how much more did it spike than I anticipated. So you kind of have a magnitude that you can play there, and then say, what are my options? Is it something that I need to look at a solution for just a little bit of time, for a little bit, or is this looking like this is going to be a long-term thing for a lot of volume? So just a couple things to consider there.
Those shipment spikes, those are that excitement, but also fear that come with the holiday season. Yes, they love this.
Totally.
Crap, how are we going to get it to them?
Sure.
So for sure, that's part of it. What are some of the biggest pitfalls then? We talked about maybe you have that big spike and you don't know what to do. So what are common pitfalls companies run into during the holiday?
Sure. So I think first and foremost is just the being unable to process the volume, right? So if you have a certain set capacity that you can get through your warehouse in a day, not being able to get through that volume kind of sets off this cascade of events where all of a sudden orders start to age. In some cases, that's going to impact when your customer gets your package. If you have more sophisticated software that's upgrading package services, that could be really expensive. So I think understanding what your volume is, where that volume is going to hit. So if you
Okay.
look at,
That's that forecasting you talked about.
correct. So if you're looking at, where your volume is going to hit across channels. So, maybe you have ship from store as an option. That's something where you want to anticipate what volume are you sending to ship from store? What volume is going across maybe a third-party logistics provider or partner that you have?
Yeah.
What's going to each of if you have multiple warehouses, what's going to each of those warehouses? So I think understanding where your volume is going, anticipating that, and then what are your fail-safes? So if let's say there's a weather event on the East Coast, can you shift volume to the West Coast and still get packages out so that you're not putting those customer orders at risk? There's some things that you can do around making sure that those volumes are anticipated to some degree, and then you have a plan to work through those. Or if they spike higher, what are your alternatives? What options do you have?
Okay, awesome. So I want to talk a little bit. I know, so one of the things that you are conducting and that you help companies with is doing a full holiday readiness assessment.
Sure.
I would love to know, when you're getting in and digging in with companies, what are the key elements that you would want to assess? What do you think businesses should be looking on when they do their own assessment?
Sure. So, I mentioned it, the forecasting and planning piece is huge. Understanding what's going to go where. I think inventory placement would be another big one. So as you're writing your POs for the holiday season, where are you intending those to land? What you should roughly match where your POs are being written across your stores network, or maybe your DCs or your 3PLs. Where are you placing that inventory? Another big component of that is not just the unit quantity, but across your item set or your SKU base. What are you sending that may be shipping in the same box? So if I order, a mug, and I order, something like this pineapple here, what if I'm anticipating my customers to buy both of those things at the same time, should I look at ways that I can get those into a single box so that, we can manage costs and mitigate the number of packages? So your inventory placement is huge. Also, when those receipts arrive. So there's sort of this process of if you've played the game Snake, there's the snake eating the egg, right? That egg, the volume will kind of flow through your whole system. And so your biggest spike to start is going to be, your inventory landing into your warehouses. So what's your receiving plan? Are you... how are you receiving that merchandise in? When do you want it available for sale? Not just having, hundreds of trucks potentially show up at your warehouse door and saying, okay, this stuff all needs to be unloaded tomorrow. Yeah. You need a plan, so you need to sequence when that stuff comes in.
Talk about stressing out your workforce and all of those different assets you mentioned earlier.
So you want to, in addition to the forecasting, the inventory placement, your receiving plan, then you want to start to transition to what's going on in your warehouse, right? So that, again, kind of go across the people, process, technology spectrum. You want to make sure that you have the right people, that they're trained in the right ways.
How early do they need to start training?
They should probably start training, assuming a November, December holiday. I would say sometime you should have the staffing plan in place by September at the latest. Okay. And then throughout September and October, even into early November, that training should be in and solidified. So start looking at your people, looking at within the warehouse, what are those folks doing? So are they trained on receiving? If you train them on outbound shipping processes in August, they might not have the right skill set to receive that merchandise. So you want to orchestrate, again, the training component. You want to make sure that you have organizational change management folks in there that have provided your supervisors and your management team the tools and resources that they need to help support these potentially new people coming into the building, providing that incremental support. How are they addressing, limited term employees, LTEs, as compared to your full-time or maybe temp workers? So you're looking at that. You're looking at your system, so your warehouse management system. Upstream from that, your order management system, and how your orders are flowing across to your your buildings, how that's being orchestrated. So that from the system side, you're making sure that that volume can kind of flow through, that there's any sort of changes or systems improvements that you have a code freeze.
Okay.
So from a technology side, you want to make sure that any improvements or enhancements are kind of landed and implemented by that, call it like mid-October timeframe at the latest, so that your teams have the ability to test out those changes, make sure that everything is implemented, ideally sooner. But at the very least, you shouldn't be making systems changes, mid-October and beyond.
Okay. So let's say that you're looking at your entire process and you're thinking, it's kind of a mess. I don't have a lot of time, time's sneaking up. People, processes, systems. Where would you look first?
So I would say you kind of want to
put you on the spot.
I know. I would say you want to put, you want to make sure you're looking at all three. The people.
He's got the political answer.
Yeah. the people piece, because you need to have people that know what they're doing. They can help figure out the process and the technology stuff.
Yeah,
but I think getting the right people in the right roles, making sure that they know what they're going to be doing, coming up with that plan, allows them to align to what's going to be happening.
Yeah. Well, and I love because people are a little bit more unpredictable in terms of we have emotions, we get sick, where processes and systems sometimes, they don't have feelings. So that's a great point. Getting your people in, getting them trained, and then using them as a resource. That's great. So if we focused on people first, then processes, then systems. Because people need to be earlier. You said September.
Yeah, I would say, at the latest September.
Okay.
But make sure that training is in. Again, you can have temp workers that are coming in and have training plans. You do want to train those people up on processes that have been established. So you want to make sure that your standard operating procedures, your SOPs are in place.
Do you have training tips?
We have somebody on our team that's really good at training.
Awesome, shout out.
And I'll try to do her justice here. So I would say, big thing is make sure that you're communicating processes that are tested and are something that you believe in. So not just write a process and then say, hey, go do this. Find out later that it's not the right process. It's confusing.
Yes.
But I would say just make sure that you are training the trainers first. So you have champions, your supervisors, your managers. These are typically the people that are going to be running your operations day-to-day, non-holiday. Make sure that those people are really solid and that they can evangelize how your operation works and sort of the culture and how you do things.
I liked how you said, getting their feedback.
Yeah.
Not just being like, here, go do this. It works.
Right. Exactly.
So, they're the people on the front lines each day.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay. Any other specific tips, actionable tips that businesses can take?
Sure. So I think a couple things. One would be come up with a communication plan. So
communication plan.
That communication plan is, clearly identifying who is specifically doing what. If something happens, what are they saying? Who are they escalating to? When do they escalate? That's a big thing. A lot of warehouses and fulfillment centers out there, there are a lot of vendors that you're working with. So that could be a software vendor like, Manhattan, or it could be, cloud storage that you need to contact and say, hey, if we need more storage than we anticipated, who do we reach out to? So
who would put together the communication plan?
That's typically going to be somebody, operations manager, somebody, operations director, somebody
knows all those processes.
That's reporting up through typically like a COO.
Great.
So I would say, make sure you have that communication plan. Make sure that you have the analytics in place. So
number 2, analytics.
Make sure that you have your KPIs, your key performance indicators. Again, across sort of a trifecta of, speed. So how quickly are things moving through the process? Cost, how much are you spending to do those things? And then then quality. So we mentioned earlier making sure that you're filling orders you're getting the customer what they ordered. Not canceling too much. So you want to make sure that you're looking at those elements and making sure that you have the business intelligence tools out there, something like an Elevate, just to plug us a little bit.
You go for it.
People have their own business intelligence tools. That could be like an SCI. It could be, something else. But
whatever it
Tableau,
is, they need to have something.
correct, so that you can kind of navigate and use that as a guide to say, how are you doing? So you created this plan. You want to figure out how you're executing to it, and if you don't have that visibility, you're kind of flying in the dark.
Right. Okay. Awesome. What about? We talked about this a little bit, but do you have any specific tips around their contingency plans or backup plans, or any examples even of maybe a company that's had an effective backup plan, stories, anything like that?
Sure. I think big thing for me is, making sure that if you need to shift volume around, so I mentioned it earlier, if you have a weather event that shuts down trucking lanes.
We had a huge one last year.
Yes.
Huge one.
Yeah. So if you have, ice storms or you have power outages or things like that, make sure that you can, if you can, again, shift volume across your different fulfillment channels. That could be something like your packaging, right? If you should be proactively communicating with your packaging supplier to make sure that they're going to be able to, stock or top off any of your corrugates or any of your dunnage, anything that you might be using there. But it may be just, hey, if something goes wrong and I can't get people into the building, is there another temp agency that I need to reach out to that maybe we've pre-vetted to some minor degree? So there's things like that you can do, just as, again, you should be thinking through those things. What happens if, I can't get any more FedEx trucks? Who am I going to? So those are just some that
Seems
come
like
to
it would
mind.
be great just to sit down with a bunch of stakeholders and just have a big old brain dump of what problems have we seen in the past? What things could we potentially anticipate?
That's absolutely correct.
And then everybody can go cry after.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fear,
but you would rather cry about it ahead of time and then have some time to do something about it rather than cry about it where you're losing customers, potentially sales, and not saving money and kind of from an expense management standpoint.
That makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's simply taking all the information, the knowledge, the data, the experience that you have within your own company. Every company is slightly different, so the problems one company may face are going to be slightly different. So taking advantage of that knowledge and using it.
And one thing I might add is, you're doing that sort of pre-gaming exercise with all of the stakeholders, making sure that everyone knows their responsibility, everyone knows their part and who they need to reach out to if something happens. You should also have something, I've heard it called a war room in the past, where during the holiday season you have
a war, Tom.
You have a central hub of a place that you can go to basically funnel all communications. That could be through something like a twice daily touch base. It could be just having a chat thread open that people escalate issues through, making sure that your support teams are queued up and are able to expand or ramp, making sure that your customer service teams know how to field calls, that they're getting a little bit of visibility to what's going on with the operation. So lots of fun stuff there. And then I will also plug post-holiday. You should be doing a what the hell just happened.
Yes.
So looking at
debrief. How quickly do you feel like, do you give people a minute to like, or are you like, hey, let's debrief before we forget?
So
what's the opinion of Tom?
Ideally, what you're doing is as you go through your day-to-day in the war room, you're taking down any opportunities that you have. So you have sort of a running list.
Okay.
And then typically that Christmas to New Year's timeframe, people need a little bit of time to recharge. But I would
that's the people element of the people processes systems.
And know too that your teams are also post-holiday likely processing a lot of returns. So they just got through this marathon sprint, and now they're asked to do, at least a 5K maybe at the end of that. So I had a brother-in-law who ran long distance in college, and he would run a 5-mile cool down after. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Exactly. But I would say, that mid-January timeframe, you were taking a look at and you're saying, we should be debriefing if you need to get folks on site, if people are distributed, do that in that January timeframe. So that will give you kind of the balance of the year to kind of figure those things out, prioritize your initiatives, understand where you might need to carve out some capital dollars to fix things for the next year.
And that's the same time of year when we start to get a lot of reports that kind of pile in of overall industry trends and what happened during peak, and some of that info like, oh, it went longer, or we saw more hiccups here or there. So I would recommend, in addition to doing your own, that you look a little bit outside and look at the greater industry trends as well.
Totally. And if you have, a consulting partner or a vendor that may be out there, a lot of them, you mentioned FedEx earlier, a lot of them will share those insights and at least give you thematic trends. Was this a light peak? Was this a heavy holiday?
Exactly.
Did weather events in the East Coast? How did carriers perform? Those sorts of things are all get discussed.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I have loved having you here, but I do want to hear from you. If you have any last minute tips or important takeaways, some of the great things that I learned today focus to me around communication.
Absolutely.
Keeping the communication open. I think that when we go in and study logistics or even dive in, we don't think of communication as being a big piece of it, but from what you're saying, it's huge.
Yes.
I really learned that today. Any other last minute tips, or what kind of support do you provide around this sort of holiday readiness?
Sure. So one of the things that we do as a Summit advisory team, we have a lot of industry professionals that have been through probably collectively hundreds of peaks. But I would say if you can go out and take some of those individuals that maybe have been at your organization, or if you want, go talk with consulting agencies just to say, hey, are there things that on this list we should be looking at that we haven't mapped out? So you want to make sure that you're kind of spot checking your work where you can. We are happy to help provide that service if need be.
Awesome.
But, it might just be reaching out to somebody, peers in the industry, friends. And one of the things being in retail is, as a consumer, what's the experience that you would want, and just think through, how can we make sure that this is as frictionless as possible to those folks, make sure that they're not waiting on call centers too long, those sorts of things.
Just take some time to think about it and look through it. Sometimes we're so busy that we forget to work on it.
And the sooner the better. I think, as painful as some of these exercises might be, again, it's a lot more painful if you go through it, you don't have a plan, and you figure out things, and you will figure out things that you didn't plan for. Just note those down, and it's a scientific, iterative process to get things built out.
I love it, Tom. It has been so good having you. Okay, I'm sure people are going to want to reach out and contact you.
Sure.
If they want to follow you or get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So I would say, easiest way is probably going on LinkedIn.
Great.
So, Tom Butt on LinkedIn. I'm part of the Easy Post family, Chief Customer Success Officer for Summit Advisory Team and our Elevate data product. So feel free to reach out to me there.
I'll throw a link in so that you guys can click it in the description.
But looking forward to hearing from everyone, and looking forward to navigating another holiday, making sure that we're keeping our customers happy. So,
all right, guys, let's get out there, be more excited than scared. Have an awesome holiday season, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.